How is everyone doing? Good morning. It is 10:30 in the morning. I am so thankful you all are here. And okay, so again, it's a pleasure to be here. I want to thank the guys at Levelstair for inviting me, the guys at Dialog for hosting the event, and just all of you who are here. It's great to see a crowd like this because, well, it's nice to see people supporting local developers. So my keynote today is about building sustainable studios, how you move from being the developers for hire to actually building your own thing, which is a lot harder than people think apparently. Just a quick introduction for who I am. I'm the founder of Rivertune Games. I've been doing this whole game dev thing as a hobby since I was 15, so that's been about 10 years now. But in a professional capacity, I've been working in the industry for the past 6. I run a small studio here in Colombo, and we've worked with a client base from all around the world: Saudi Arabia, Australia, the US, UK, South Korea, Guatemala, and Sri Lanka. Hopefully it's a project that we're trying to get underway. But yes, so the first thing I want to talk about is passion versus profit. How many of you got into game development because you were really interested in games, like just loved games as a child? Can I see a show of hands? Okay, so how many of you actively work in the industry currently? And how many of you are slowly starting to lose a love for gaming because you sit in front of the computer all day coding? Okay, I'm seeing a couple hands. So that's great. Which is actually the first thing I want to talk about, which is passion versus profit. There's a clear distinction between the two. Just quickly going back to my journey, I did forget to add a slide about where I worked before I started doing all this, all these little games for fun. But back in 2021, I had just gotten out of a job, and I was burnt out. And I was telling my friends, you know what would be really fun? Let's make a game where you play as a goose, and it's a dating simulator. Interspecies relationships, weird concept, but we thought it was funny, and admittedly, it was pretty fun to make. A bit afterwards, I got really into the visual novel genre, and I started taking on more writing positions on a bunch of indie projects. So this one. I worked on this project called the disaster of Project Domus Nova. It was a interesting experience to work on. But it was a story set in the wreckage of a ship called the Domus Nova, and we were a cleanup crew who would enter the ship and try to piece together what happened, very Return of Obra Dinn-esque. Then afterwards, I somehow got drafted by one of the writers I worked with on Domus Nova into a game called Forgotten Souls. Again, one of my favorite games to date, because this is the first game that we actually got on Steam. You can actually scan the QR code if you want to take a look at it. It is free to play, and I recommend it. This particular project was, again, I quite loved it. And it kind of gave me the confidence to say, you know what, I think I'm ready to go out and do this on my own. After finishing Forgotten Souls, I decided, you know what, I think I'm good enough to actually go and do this on my own. I'd worked at Motion Miracles for about a year, and we were in a department which was heavy, which was very publishing heavy. We worked with some of the biggest publishers industry, so Voodoo, Supersonic. And later on, I took that experience and started working at Quali. So with that experience, from my freelance work, I managed to land one project. It was concerningly large. It was a team of me, my sister, and a couple of friends of mine from Motion Miracles. And we made this game called Yokai Bill. And it launched, and the public did not like it. They absolutely hated it. There was a lot of mass media controversy, partially because of the source of funding, which was the Guatemalan government, and the country did not like their government. It was a whole thing. But life goes on. After Yokai Bill, I turned back to my roots, hyper casuals, again, working with Quali and a bunch of other studios. Again, we pushed out so many games with them, and honestly, I don't remember half of them. This is just a picture I pulled off the internet just because I wanted to have some reference. But when you work in mobiles, actually, do you guys work, is there anyone here who works in mobile games? Yeah, so you guys know how, how many games you push out in quick succession to the point where you don't even remember, where you don't even remember the games you worked on. At a certain point, you look at your Google Play account, be like, oh yeah, I worked on this a couple years ago. And it's a weird situation. Normally you'd want to remember the games you've worked on. So over the years, I think we're working with mobile, I wanted to try a piece of PC gaming. And there were a couple games we worked on that never saw the light of day, but were more or less done. Partially came down to situations where the client couldn't afford to publish the game, or their marketing budget wasn't enough and they kept delaying the game and the project died, or they'd order the first half of the game and then they'd lose the interest and they'd just eat the loss. And there were a bunch of games that we worked on that, honestly, I loved. Another was one of those projects that didn't see the light of day, mostly because the producer of the game had family issues and she was not able to bring the project to see the light of day, even though we got most of the way through. And I wish you all could play it. It is again relevant now, especially now in the time of AI. The another one over there in the corner, Hollow Zombies again, which was a HoloLive fan project, which we were in the process of getting publishing through the official Japanese company, which it got through most of the process, but then again the producers had issues and they had to cancel the project. And even within the studio, and at this point it was only myself, and we were producing this game called Cursed at Dawn, which got very far into development, but we had a lot of production issues internally, writers dropping out, voice actors dropping out, composers dropping out. And this project, again, something I poured a lot of love and energy into, which never saw the light of day and eventually got trumped out by actual for-profit work, which unfortunately, again, if you're a game developer, you understand what this feels like. You'll start a project, you'll get through it, and then all of a sudden you'll hit that roadblock where it just stops development entirely and you have to put it on hold and you never come back to it. And it's problematic. And I think, like, what if you look at your projects, if I look at my projects folder, I have like 90 gigabytes of unfinished projects. But eventually, I had to put my foot down with a lot of these disappointing projects because as a developer and as someone who sits with the client for quite some time, you put a lot of yourself into your work, right? So when those projects don't see the light of day, a little part of you dies inside and you become more and more cynical. Eventually coming to the point, at least for me personally, I tell my clients, okay, I don't care about the money, I don't care what you think, this game has to come out, otherwise I refuse to take this project. And this was the result of me deciding, okay, we'll do this, which is Hero vs. Demons. It's up on Steam currently. The release is, if I'm not mistaken, in the second week of June, if I'm not mistaken. But again, QR is here. You guys can take a look at it, pull the demo, and if you go by our stall, you can actually play the game. Then in that process, there was another client whom we picked up, like a guy from Saudi Arabia in the telecom business who wanted to build a multiplayer game. And as we were working with him for the past 2 years, he decided, you know what, we can make this better, we can make this bigger. And he wanted to come on as an investor/client. So this is stuff from his, we'll be posting about it very soon. We're actually nearing the phase where we can actually talk about it. But we got like some really cool stuff coming up. And again, one of the projects I'm excited to talk about later on, but we're not quite there yet, but you guys will hear about it soon. So along with this additional funding, we decided to revive a project that was very near and dear to me. And again, something we picked up with a bunch of volunteers, but it died halfway. It's a game called Project Keepers, and we revived it. And how do you put it? Like there was quite a bit of work done on it initially. We had character designs sorted, we had like a bunch of sketches, some amazing artwork, and unfortunately, GIFs don't translate very well into a PDF format. Actually, I don't think it works really well in general on PowerPoints, but we had like some amazing little animations done, and we ended up reviving that. So again, you can scan the QR code, it's up on Steam, we have a demo, and you guys can play it at our booth. And this game is 100% owned by us. So there's it. Actually, if we can skip back to slide 15. Yeah, so this particular project is a game called Silver OLED, and this particular game is a 50-50. Since the client came on as an investor, they wanted us to take over, develop, and make this our own IP. So own IP in a partial sense. So they own about 50% of the IP, we own the other 50%, which is actually going to be a big part of the talk. If you can skip to slide 18, going back to Keepers. With Keepers in particular, with this newfound funding, we actually were able to hire a full development team, in the sense, like we have dedicated developers full time, we have artists, and we're currently in the process of onboarding a bunch of voice actors, and it's happened in such a short period of time where I have to pinch myself to make sure I'm alive and make sure this is actually happening. But we have some really cool artwork. Again, you guys can play this at our booth, so I won't mull on it too much. But in this whole process of building the studio and getting to the point we're at, I had to keep asking myself, do I have passion for my work? And it's a question I want to extend to you guys. Do you guys have passion for your work? And I think, okay, just a quick show, because I did forget how many of y'all are in the games industry, but how many of y'all are actively involved in the games industry in a professional capacity? So it's a question for you guys. Do you have passion for your work? You guys are really quiet. We're going to have to be a little louder. Okay, but here's the thing. Passion doesn't pay the bills. You can love something, but if that something has no commercial value or any form of value to the market, it doesn't pay the bills. And I'm sorry it's a gut punch, right? But it is. Passion doesn't pay the bills, which is what I want to talk about first. The golden handcuffs. Again, when I say golden handcuffs, this is the kind of work where you work for a client. This is the developer for hire. And the reason you'd want to get into this in the first place is it brings money, right? Passion doesn't really pay the bills. It is smart business decisions and not smart business, but entrepreneurial decisions that bring in the cash to make, for you, that allow you to do your passion. The golden handcuffs. Here's the thing. Client work is not glamorous. It is very tedious, and frankly, none of us are above it. Unless, like what, we have like a couple $1 million sitting in our bank accounts. We don't have the luxury as developers, as creatives, to be sitting around and doing things the way we want. Unless, again, if you have a full-time job and this is a side project, that's fine. But for a lot of us, we want to make this our full-time careers, right? So, for the most part, unless you're working a full-time job, you are not above client work. And sometimes you just have to swallow your pride and take on work because, how do I put it, client work equals payroll. And here's the thing. When it comes to client work, you have the option of saying no, right? This is where you have to talk about your ethics. In my case, when it comes to the genre that we work in a lot, visual novels and other multiplayer games, we get the question of generative AI and a concerning amount of NSFW work. It is, visual novels specifically, it's half NSFW, half SFW, and it is very concerning. But as a studio, as a person who runs these projects and makes sure they get done, we turn down any work that is NSFW, and we say no to any Gen AI. And if the client can't deal with that, sure, you know what? I just say we don't have the luxury of saying no to a client, but we should if it goes against our own ethics, because at the end of the day, what do you call it? Chasing profits doesn't mean selling out the medium it's about, right? It's about, go to the next slide. It's about the people you work with. And anyone who's worked in a managerial capacity has been told that, what do you call it? You should treat your people, you should treat your employees like they're family. But I would say, no, they are not family. Everyone who works for you are people who clock in at a certain time and clock out at a certain time. You can be friendly with them, but they're not family. You can't expect them to stay beyond what they're contracted to. So, as a founder, you have to make sure that your people are alive, and the things you can't really do anything without a team. So, I'm going to circle back to some of the most slightly depressing stuff, which is service work, right? It's think of it like a treadmill. The thing is, when you do client work, what you're essentially doing is outsourcing your time for money. So as long as you work, as long as you keep working, the money comes in. And the moment you stop working, the money stops. It stops coming in. When you build a product for a client, it's their product, it's not yours. So when they walk away with the product, that's it. You own nothing, unless, of course, you go back and say, hey, we want royalties, we want these. But then one of the sad states of the industry right now is if you say no, there's going to be someone else who says yes for an even lower price and even crappier terms, right? It's again, one of the sad things about globalization and the economy growing with this industry becoming more and more accessible, there is always going to be someone who will do it for cheaper. So someone who will always do it on worse terms. So sometimes you have to take what you can get. And again, as I mentioned, this is not about, to a certain point, it's not about passion. It's about keeping the lights on to do what you have to do as a studio founder, as a director, as someone who leads a team to make sure that your team has a job to come back to the next day, has the means to work for you, to do, to enact your vision as a creative leader. And circling back to this, it's client work and outsourced work feels like a treadmill. It's an endless cycle. You work. You finish a project. You look at the company account. You okay, we have 2 months of runway. Time to find another project in that time. You work, and it becomes an endless cycle. And it can lead to a massive amount of burnout, which again, those of you who are in the mobile games industry might have faced this already, especially hyper casuals, where back when I was in the field, it was usually a week or two to turn one game around, which is again, games are not meant to be churned out that quickly. It's a part of you. You can't keep churning out games like that. Which brings me to the next question: if outsourced work is the devil, how do you make a studio function? How do you build a studio, right? And which actually brings me to the question: how do you value a company? Does anyone have an answer? Anybody? Any startup bros? Anyone involved in the startup industry? Okay, so but yes, here's the thing. A company valuation is based on what you do as a company. So if you make products, your company's value is directly pegged against the product you make. If you do services for other people, your company value is pegged against the revenue and the revenue or the quantity of services and how much the services make the company, right? And here's the thing. Freelance work, freelance work and outsource work helps you grow the company, but it does not help you grow the company at a healthy rate. Okay, healthy rate, in the sense like it does help you grow, right? But it's not the healthiest rate. And here's the thing. The reason your company valuation is important is for fundraising. When you get, this is when you actually get money, but not really. So, intellectual properties. Intellectual properties are defined as intangible creations of the human mind, and it protects products of original thought, such as inventions, artistic works, designs, symbols, granting creators exclusive rights to use, license, or profit from their creations. So that is what the meat of this presentation is mostly about, and which actually leads me back into into intellectual properties and what it means to start a studio. Because what you make is your IP. And if you make a product for somebody else, you are benefiting the client, not yourself. So it gives you clout, right? But if it's not yours, it's not benefiting you in the long run. So let's just quickly go over some of the biggest franchises in the industry to give you an idea of how important it is. Minecraft, as the Minecraft IP is worth in the 15 to 25 billion USD range. The Five Nights at Freddy's IP is in the 1.2 billion to 2 billion USD range. The Undertale / Deltarune intellectual property is in the 150 to 200 million USD range. The Iron Lung the Iron Lung game, which got a movie recently, by the way. Has anyone seen it yet? Okay, so neither have I, but I've heard really good things about it. But even that IP is worth in the 50 to 75 million range. And one of the newer games that came out, Mouthwashing, which I am yet to play, but I've heard really good things about, is in the 15 to 25 million range. But the point is, right, all these individual products that are owned by the company, by the studio that makes it, gives the studio direct value. And I'm not saying that doing outsourcing work doesn't. It definitely does. It gives you value as a developer, as a team that can do things. But by taking that talent and actually making games and making products that you own, that is how you grow as a studio. So here's the thing. When I say IPs, I've been talking exclusively about games this whole time, right? But it's not only games. You had to think a lot bigger. Intellectual properties are effectively brands. They are brands that have the potential to produce merchandise, movies and TV shows, books, webcomics, games, again, one thing that the main reason we're here, music and other events and other private communities, Patreon, for example. But the point is, intellectual properties, we should be thinking of them not as individual games, but as something more expansive. So I'll bring up one of my absolute favorite examples, which I point to is the series, is this thing called the Nasuverse. Any Fate fans here? Anyone familiar with the Fate universe? But it was so the Fate, so this universe was started by this guy called Kinoko Nasu and one of his friends in 1998 as a web novel. 2 years later, they followed up the web novel with a visual novel called Tsukihime, which is based in the Garden of Sinners universe. And later on, even further in 2004, which was the big hit moment for them, they released this visual novel called Fate Stay Night. And this particular franchise has ballooned. It's gone. It's ballooned over the years to a massive multimedia empire. So the Garden of Sinners book was eventually adapted into 8 films that were released from 2007 to 2013. Then the main Fate Stay Night series had a bunch of other spin-off material. So Fate Zero, which was a prequel, Fate Strange Fate, which is an alternative timeline. And again, both those novels were converted into anime. And even then, those were converted to anime. And if you're looking at Fate now, Fate Grand Order is where the series is currently being written, which is a mobile game, it's a mobile gacha game if you're familiar with the genre. And the point is, the series that started off with just one simple web novel ended up spawning what is, if I'm not mistaken, $4, $5, $6 something billion franchise now. And the point is, it happened because the creators didn't think small. They didn't think, oh, let's just do one thing. Let's make it multiple things. And this is kind of circling back to Keeper's Green. We showcased this game at Lanka Comic-Con last year, and we pushed merchandise sales. So we had posters, stickers, a set of limited trading cards that were available only at that event and through select means. And through these merchandising through these merchandising, we actually raised enough capital to, one, completely pay off the cost for Lanka Comic-Con, to pay off the cost for the merchandise, plus for us to have a little bit of cash left over after getting the game on Steam. And I think it was at that moment we realized, okay, hold on. We have something here where even the game wasn't out. We had just had a really crappy demo. But it still brought people in from, one, our social media, who had seen it, people whom Sri Lankans who had been talking to on Discord, the Reddits and the subreddits, but like a massive social push to make not the game the main thing, but the property. Because at the end of the day, I don't plan to end this game with just one entry. Looking at the vision, if you talk to my team, we have a 3 to 4 year plan to get this out. And right now, with the push we're doing in the relevant communities, we are getting quite a bit of traction, and it's honestly low-key scary. We have just last month on Reddit, we were able to push close to 200,000 impressions just on Reddit alone. Through the relevant, honestly, Reddit has been our biggest thing, and our Discord server had grown from about 5 people, which was just our team, to close to 100 within the span of a month. And this is again us focusing on not only the game, but building everything that supports it. So again, building the brand, building the Keeper's brand, right? So this is what I mean. If you're making a game, don't think of it as just this one thing. Don't think, like if you want to make something, if you want to make a mobile game, don't think of it as only a mobile game. It's a brand that brings people together, right? So if you can skip back to slide 35. Again, thinking back to the Nasuverse, because again, I can't think, I find it really hard to find a very particular intellectual property that's capitalized on their popularity and diversified to make it so that there's something for everyone in the within the fandom. Again, again, this is me talking about Fate mostly because I really love the franchise, but two, there's something for everybody, and it's just the best example for this. If you take Garden of Sinners, for example, it's a lot more. It's a supernatural mystery series of stories. You take Strange Fake and Zero. It's heavily action oriented. You go to Grand Order. It's a gacha game. It attracts a very particular audience, and these are not the only products within it. There's, I think, like 50, 60 different products within the intellectual property. So if you're into the magical girl genre, like Madoka Magica or Sailor Moon, there's a very niche subset within that. If you're into cooking shows, there's a very particular niche. There's a very particular niche series of. There's one season of the anime in for this. But the idea is that when you build something, you can't think of it just as a one and done thing. And again, I speak of massive scale. It's not easy. It's never easy. But again, this is where this is where, if you have the right vision and if you have the ability to execute on it and you understand the market, if you can go to the next thing, you can easily bring in funding and development opportunities. So as I mentioned earlier, we have various means of getting your products made, right? Obviously, product number one is the absolute hardest. The thing that you're making on your own will be the hardest because, one, you are your harshest critic. But two, it's your money. It's your own thing. It would most likely be an unproven idea if you don't have a track record. So to get your games out there, you have three very common means. There are other means of getting it done, but I'll just go with the three most common. The number one would be bootstrapping it, where you bring your own revenue. So you do outsourcing work, you do whatever it takes to build up that bank account, to build up enough of reserve cash to fund the team. Or two, publishers. You can take your IP to a publisher. You can build a prototype. Actually, we are in the process of getting a publisher, so that's going to be a whole thing. But you take your IP to a publisher. They provide the development funds and they handle the marketing. Again, you have some massive teams. Team 17, Tiny Build, Gearbox, Humble Games, Daedalic, Focus, Devolver, one of my favorite ones actually, and Annapurna, which I have opinions about. But based on what you make, there is someone who publishes it. For example, if you make sandbox type games, Coffee Stain Interactive, they're your guys. They made Deep Rock Galactic was one of their things. There were a bunch of other games they made. Then Annapurna, they are very into story-based games. You go to Tiny Build, they look for the 1,000-hour games that are very mechanics and systems heavy. So think Hello Neighbor, or I'm trying to remember one more. Yeah, I don't remember one thing. Humble Games, another one. They are a lot more individual story specific. So small, it's not story specific, but they focus smaller games. Two examples. One was A Short Hike, which was a game they published a while ago. And one of their more popular successes was Stray Gods, if you're familiar with that. It was again, a game that I personally love. Then obviously, apart from publishers, you have investors. That is honestly the harder one to get, because especially in Sri Lanka, nobody really wants to throw their money at this newfangled video games thing when everyone thinks, oh, video games, yeah, shooting games where you kill people? Yeah, that's all most people think there are. And it's concerning. But obviously people in the know that you have the most random games out there. Again, the one that I made for fun a long time ago, where you are a goose and you are trying to date a human for some reason. And you have what? City builders, you have colony managers, god simulators, construction games. But the point is, the Sri Lankan market currently is something that is gearing up towards it, and conferences like this help build awareness for the medium. So I think in the next 5 to 6 years, we will be seeing like a massive improvement in this area. But for now, again, as Sri Lankans, we have bootstrapping, which is something we're very familiar with. A lot of us are in a software background, I'm assuming, and this is something we're very familiar with. Publishers are difficult, but if just a couple of us are able to get our name out there through a publisher, it makes it easy for all of us. So that's something that studios like us are pushing for. Pushing to the next one. But here's the thing, funding is a massive topic, and there is a panel discussion for this down the line. So that, like today actually, there's a panel for this, so we'll probably talk about it there. So I think we are running out of time, so I will open up the floor to any questions. Yes.
What are your thoughts on generative AI? Like, do you guys not use it, or like?
Okay, so Gen AI, again, personally, it's a 50-50 stance here. Part of it is like what we consider it to be somewhat acceptable if we're using it strictly for the process of ideating, as long as it doesn't see the engine at all whatsoever.
Like, what do you mean by ideating? Is it like concept design or like?
Sort of, yeah. So the idea would be that say you have a very particular thing in your head. For example, a mannequin that has like a very particular set of proportions and eats clothes to change its shape, for example. And say you have a really hard so. A lot of us in the studio are introverts, and we have like a really hard time kind of expressing our idea. So one thing that we kind of do is we turn to Gen AI to kind of get something that is a close approximation. So if it's, for example, a mannequin, we'd like use it to generate something that looks like a mangled mannequin. And then we go around to platforms like Pinterest and Instagram and other relevant art platforms to find other source of information, like other pieces of media that can back up the idea. So, because the thing is, like, we work in original ideas, right? And if we want to test something, we have two options. Either we get our artists to do it, like to do a bunch of sketches, but then again, we have the issue of like all of us being introverts and us finding it really hard to communicate exactly what we have in our head to them. So if we can make the process somewhat easier, that I think is where Gen AI really shines. But the stance is as long as it does not see the engine or the light of day.
So it's like a mood board, you are creating a mood board?
Pretty much. Mood boards are a big part of the creative process, I will agree. It's actually the biggest thing. So like whenever I have a character design, I'd go and just create like a Google Doc where I'd go to YouTube, find a bunch of videos and things that kind of give the feel and the context of the idea and put it in. Then I'd go find pictures that would match, that would kind of, convey the idea a little bit more. Find videos, GIFs, basically anything that can convey my idea in multiple senses. If that, like, it's a bit of an interesting process, but if, like, for example, I'm unable to find anything that can convey it, then obviously Gen AI would be the only other thing apart from drawing really crude sketches which are not above. Any other questions? Yes.
Are there any channels or resources to find output in this industry?
Okay, so this is actually an interesting question. So one thing, like if you're an individual, you have the obvious ones, right? Like Fiverr, Upwork, Freelancer, all those. But here's the thing, those platforms are incredibly crowded. It's always a race to the bottom. So I tend to not touch those platforms at all whatsoever. But what I found, surprisingly, is content creation. We have a YouTube channel that I used to post a bunch of videos and tutorials on, specifically in the visual novel niche back in the day. And people who would see the videos would just find my email through the channel and email me saying, hey, I really want to work with you on this, and what kind of budget do you have? So again, I think when it comes to finding clients, it's simply a matter of visibility. Basically being the loudest voice, the most visible person in that niche. So even if it's going on to Fiverr, if you have a profile that screams, oh, I've done this before, you will get clients through that medium. It's hard, it's not easy.
Sorry, but I think you misunderstood. I want to scout for talent.
Oh, talent, yes. Okay, so talent, if you're looking into within Sri Lanka, it is a bit of a difficult, it is a bit of a difficult process. But the cool thing is, if you look for them, you will find. So what I found is, the number one thing would be communities like Levelstair. They have dedicated groups of people, dedicated groups for talent finding. Oh, okay. Yes, sorry. But in terms of talent, it's, well, again, it kind of goes back to the previous point of visibility, where obviously if you're looking for someone, put it up on LinkedIn, put it up on Indeed, put it up on I don't know, Glassdoor, but you can put it up on top jobs in Sri Lanka, for example. You can go to, you can create a simple Instagram post and send it to the relevant Discord and WhatsApp groups within the country, right? So again, it's kind of the same thing I'd say about finding clients. It's, again, visibility, because when you cast wide enough of a net, you'll catch enough fish and you can sort through them to find what you want. Or worst case, you just hire interns and you build them up, to the level you want, which is what we personally do within the studio. But then also it is hard to find interns in the field. So it's, again, a bit of a 50-50. So we have a couple of questions. How would you overcome the challenge of having someone who would work for a client for cheaper and less, as a startup? Okay. So as I mentioned before, right, since the market's kind of grown quite a bit, it's slowly started to become a bit of a race to the bottom. When it, again, kind of circling back to freelancer platforms, you would see people undercutting each other. And here's the thing, right? How would you overcome the challenge of having someone who'd work for a client for a cheaper price and less conditions? Honestly, at a certain point, it just becomes one of those things where if it doesn't work out, you move on. Because at a certain point, it's about how much your headspace gets occupied. It is a tough one. I personally, for me, if the client doesn't want to work with us at our rates, we would just move on and find someone else to work with. Not the easiest thing to say for people who are just starting out in the industry and who don't have a portfolio, where, again, sometimes you do have to dig through mud to find a diamond, if that makes sense. Okay, what is the biggest non-technical mistake you made with your studio made? Okay, non-technical. I would say it's visibility. Again, because if you look at our social media channels, we aren't doing that great. Our Instagram numbers aren't that great. Our TikTok numbers aren't that great. And I think for me, the biggest thing would be focusing, not having focused on general social media, because a lot of our, because within certain niches, we are fairly known. If you go to very specific communities, we'd have our work somewhat recognized. But in the grander scale, like in Sri Lanka, for example, not a lot of people know we exist. You guys might, because, well, I'm here right now physically. But then also, you guys are developers. You guys are in the know, keeping a pulse on the field. But if you talk to one random person on the street or some random gamer you meet, they probably won't know us. I think that is one of our biggest makers. I am being told that we are strapped for time, or should I just wrap this up? I have one more question. Okay. What would you advise for a person who wants to start video games? Team Pepper, two of my friends, uni. Small game and start. Okay, so here's the beautiful thing about games, right? I don't think I didn't get to cover this early on, but as a developer in this creative field, you don't get to just wear one singular hat. You have to learn almost everything or have a general understanding of everything. To be, how to put it, as Tarun had put in his presentation earlier, a jack of all trades is a master of none, but still better than a master of one, right? And the way I just say would be pick up an engine, start working. That is literally it, right? There should be, like, again, if you are considering this to be a personal for fun project, there should be nothing that stops you from, well, making it. If you want to make something, get your friends together and just make it. That is kind of the end of it. But if it is a for-profit game, there are things to consider. But again, I think that is a conversation for later. So yes, that is it for now. So I guess we'll wrap this up and hand it over to the guys at Levelstair. Thank you so much for having me. And you've been a great audience.